1903 by the American brothers Orville and Wilbur Wright and lasted exactly 12 seconds. But airplanes have come a long way since then. As World War I began, planes became integral to the success of a country. Whether it was acting for reconnaissance or destruction, armies of the Great War became dependent upon airplanes to win many of their battles. If the United States wants to tip the balance of this long stalemate, airplanes are the perfect weapon to use.
I'm here with Allison Herman, World War I aircraft expert. So tell us, why should Secretary of War Newton Baker and Secretary of State Robert Lanson buy airplanes to use in the war?
Well, we've seen a lot of countries using airplanes, such as the Germans, the French, the British, the Russians, the Dutch, and Italians. In fact, Germany used these weapons at the Battle of Verdun.
That's right. Let's go over to Brett Chatterton, who is now at the Battle of Verdun reenactment.
Falkenhayn, one of the top German generals, used artillery and anti-air as one of his key weapons against the French. However, the French pilots were very brave and flew through the anti-air, still allowing them to view the movement and position of the German army. These pilots were mainly used for artillery observation, meaning they would give location and coordinates for the artillery to fire on the opposing army. This aided the French in holding off the German assault.
Thank you, Brett. We'll come back to you later.
So, as you saw, Falkenhayn's strategy was to blind the French by knocking out their airplanes and balloons.
How would this have benefited the Germans?
One of the many purposes of planes was aerial reconnaissance, which involved pilots flying over the opposite country's troops to sketch their positions. This way, that country would have an advantage. They'd know the enemy's tactics. So by knocking out the planes and balloons, Germany was essentially blinding the French, as they couldn't see the German positions anymore.
Interesting. What were they used for?
They were also used for bombing and shooting. In some cases, pilots would drop bombs onto the troops below. Other times, guns were fired from above. One French pilot, Roland Garros, bolted steel deflectors to the propeller so that he could shoot a machine gun through it.
Now we have Brett at the reenactment of the Battle of Tannenberg, where Russian-German Alexander Samoso ignored the warnings of the observational pilot. Can you tell us more about this?
That's right. He ignored his pilot's warning, leading to half of the army either being killed or captured. Once again, the planes here were being used for reconnaissance. Both sides had aircrafts, but the Germans greatly outnumbered the Russians. However, the Russian recon planes still managed to gather important information the Russians ignored. The German aircrafts gathered important information of where the troops were moving up, causing the German army to have a tactical advantage. These recon missions were very dangerous, with two-man crews and little firepower, and they were easily shot down. The pilots were very brave.
As you saw, General Samsonov of Russia ignored his pilots' observations and warnings, ultimately causing half of his army to be either captured or killed, leading the Germans to win this battle.
Why do you think it's a good idea for the U.S. to adapt this technology?
The airplane has many purposes, such as observational, travel, and infiltration advantages, as well as being useful for bombing and shooting.
Thank you for your time. Back to Katie.
Airplanes are some of the newest and best technology and are essential to the war effort. We hope you take our points into consideration. Thanks for watching.